Hi, my name's Danny Fenton and I'm an aero modeller and an engineer. Join me on a fascinating journey where I show you some of the techniques used in scale aero modelling. Hello again modellers, we're back in the workshop. I'm going to show you something a little bit different today. Well, it's not really different. If you've been watching all my videos all the way, sort of over the last couple of years, you'll have seen I've done this before. This is to do with moulding and using silicone RTV resin to make a mould. And what I'm going to be doing today is something that could be interesting. I don't know, we'll see how it goes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quarter scale pilot head that has been very kindly printed for me. I bought the STL file and then I sent the STL file to a friend who resin printed a head for a model, and it's come out really nice. It's fine, it's great, but it's a civilian pilot. In fact, it's a glider pilot, and he doesn't have any headgear or anything like that on. And I want to put him into a tiger moth, quarter scale tiger moth. So I wanted to add some headgear to his, a hat with some ear bits and pieces. And I still need to look at goggles and that sort of stuff. But I want to add a hat. And I thought probably the best way to do it is make it out of plasticine and just put it all over the head that I've got. And then we'll make a mould from that, and then we'll cast some hollow roto-molded heads from that. So I'm just going to show you how I do it really. And it's fairly straightforward. And we'll dive straight in with me adding plasticine to the head, and we'll take it from there. So as you can see, I'm just working away the plasticine and smoothing it down where I can and getting the rough shape. What you have got to be careful of is that you don't make the plasticine too thick. So right at the early stages, you probably saw me putting the tool into the plasticine to see how far the skull was underneath. I didn't want this to be too thick. The area that is a bit of a problem and that is quite thick is here, and that's where the ears are. Okay, so it is raised here. Now I've got a bit more defining to do on this strap. I've got to do some sort of buckle affair, and I might make the strap a little bit narrow because it's looking very wide. So we'll refine it as we go along. Now the early I don't know what you'd call it, hats or helmets, didn't have anything on the sides. And in fact, the picture that I'm referencing for this, which is on the screen just there, actually has just rings here and a little pop stud or a little popper, so that you would put something in there and then close the area up. And it is literally just a ring rather, or a pocket. And on the one I'm looking at on the picture, there's nothing inside it, so it's flat against the head, it's just a ring. But most of the ones I've seen subsequently have had bulges here, so that you can have a proper radio headset, or at least have the earpieces inside there. So the jury's still out on whether I make these domed sections, but I am quite tempted to add them because I think it might look pretty cool. Although this aircraft hasn't got radio and it hasn't got electrics, so it wouldn't have had a headset and it wouldn't have had an intercom between the front and the rear. They would have used a tube or a pipe or something like that. So I don't know, jury's still out. I'm going to keep making it and see how we go. But you can see how it works. And what we'll do is, once we've got this just the way we want it, then I'll make a silicone mould of this, and then I'll be able to pour hollow versions of the head. And this is quarter scale, obviously. Right, let's have a look at how the buckle's going to be. So the buckle is going to be over here on this side. And basically we have a sort of a loop here with a ring, and then the flap sort of curls out. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. Let's try adding a bit of material to it and see what we can do. So we'll put that there for now, and we'll just start playing with it. So what we need to have is a lump. So the strap comes and then in amongst that we've got to make a buckle.
So that's exactly what I'm going to try and make. Just going to try and make something that is the right shape of a buckle. And it's kind of a metal ring that's sort of D-shaped. Now the end of this tool is not fine enough to try this one. See if we can get in there with that. It's marginally better. A little bit too sharp, perhaps. As you can see, I'm sort of pressing the clay. I'm not scraping it or scratching at it, I'm just pushing it. Pushing the tool flat down. Just sort of moving the clay around. What we have to do now is simulate that strap actually coming out through that buckle. Now what it would normally do is come out and go down. In fact, it would come through. There's usually a pin goes through the bit that's sticking out. So what I've now got to try and do is make that belt come out through this hole. So although we seem to have made an area there that's now got the D-ring in it, we've now actually got to fill that in. It seems a bit contradictory, but that's what we have to do. So I'm just going to take a bit of modelling clay, and I'm actually just going to put it down and cut it to be the width of this strap. So I'm actually going to start with a flat piece. And now I'm going to actually try and put that in there, but you can see it's not as wide as the strap, so I need to make it a little bit wider. And the end would be round or curved. And then the bit through the D-ring will be straight. So let's see if we can actually add that to this. So that would go in there. Like that. Now what you would also have is you'd have a little tiny pin that would go through the D, Actually, I've not done that right, because what it would do would actually rest on top of the D-ring, like that. And it would come through a hole in the belt. So what I'm going to do is just make that a little bit more pronounced. I am no artist. You know, there's people out there that are far better at this than me. Scale modelling is really about creating an illusion. So just do what you can. I'm not sure if you can see that, but now it looks like, well, a bit like he's got a strap. I mean, that would probably do just the way it is. But I want to keep going, and we'll see if we can do something at the side here with these ear bits. Don't know what yet, but I think what I might do is I'll try and replicate the one I've got and see how that goes. I could also do really with having the head on a stick, because what I'm doing is I'm holding the head via the plasticine, and what I'm doing is I'm actually shaping it while just gripping it, and that's not really what I wanted to do. So putting the head on a stick is probably a very good idea, but I haven't. But with hindsight, always good having some hindsight. Now sometimes some lines along the edge of the strap is going to sort of make it look a little bit like it's textured, or even a little bit cracked, which is potentially what would happen with a leather strap. I think I'm going to put these lumps on the side. So this is going away from the picture that I've got. Let's see what we can do with that. Now the way these would be attached, there'd be an edging of material around the bulge that would lie against the helmet, and that would be stitched. So what I've got to try and do is create an edge. Well, I'm quite liking the way that's looking. Now whether we add any wires to these remains to be seen, but as you can see, it's starting to look pretty good. So if I can do a similar sort of earlobe thing on the other side, I'm actually wondering whether that's too high, in fact, because his ear isn't there. His ear is further down and further forward. But anyway, I think it looks pretty good. We'll keep going. probably a slightly better positioning. Slightly too much material. And as we did last time, we just pull a lip down all the way around the edge. What I'm doing here is I'm just pulling the clay around to make this area here a little bit more rounded. There we go, progress so far. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to make a hole in the neck, probably with the Dremel grinding tool or something, and insert a stick up into the head, because I really do need to be able to hold this firmly and rigidly without putting my fingers all over the model, because I'm squashing it and distorting the shape, and I keep breaking this buckle bit through here, so it would be a shame to ruin that. So that was working really well. But, anyway, there you go. So I'll stop at that for now and glue the head onto a stick. Okay, so I added a stick to the bottom of the neck, and I carried on carving and whittling and shaping the plasticine, as you can see, and then I just used the pointy end of one of the sharp sticks to sort of score lines, and just a little, almost like pinholes, stippling to give an idea of the stitching. And the buckle looks fairly okay. It looks better in real life than it does actually on the video. So there we go. So that's how he is so far. What do you think of it so far? Rubbish. If you remember in a previous video, the resin, the RTV silicone rubber I used, had gone too thick, and it made casting something quite difficult. It was a propeller blade for a hurricane. So what I'm going to do is just going to open this tin. This has been on the shelf for a while now, and Taranti stuff is very expensive. It's very good, but it's very expensive. So I'm just going to open it and see what we've got. It has been completely sealed, and I have heard that if you open them and then don't use them, then you have a problem. But this has never been opened, so I'm hoping it's still good. Well, if that's solid, then we've had it. Bit thick. But for what I'm going to use it for, it might be fine. And as I've said before, if I've got stock and it's old and it's gone thick on me, then I need to use it, get rid of the stuff. It is glooping a little bit. Anyway, so we'll carry on. We'll make a mould and see how we get on. Here's the head that I've been making for the pilot for my quarter scale tiger moth. So all this is done with plasticine. In future, I'm going to use some super putty, super Sculpey, which is it's not a plasticine based stuff. The problem with plasticine is it gets hot in your fingertips and then you damage it, and you can mark it really easily just because your fingers are warm. Super Sculpey is a polyester based putty, and it's great in that you can use it just like plasticine, but you can then dip it in hot water, boiling hot water, and it will set it, and then you can put another layer on of more detail and you won't damage the previous layer. I actually stood this in a jar, as you can see here, just on the bench, and inadvertently knocked it over the other day, and of course it landed right on one of the ear pads and completely flattened it. At least it didn't land on the strap, which would have been a little bit more disastrous, but there we go. All right, so let's make a mould box and take it from there. So even though the resin is fairly thick, it's not too bad, and the bubbles are rising out of it quite nicely, so that's good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pour it in a very thin stream. This helps get the bubbles out. Also, you must fill a mould from the bottom up, so you shouldn't really pour it over the subject. You should let the fill line come up and envelop the subject. So that's what I'm going to try and do. Now I'm sure it's going to need more than one pot for this, but we'll go with this and see how we get on. Doesn't look like we're going to be even halfway with one pot, so it's going to be a bit more than that. And those of you with steely eyes, very observant amongst you, you'll have noticed that the neck of the pilot figure has got a hole that will need to be plugged before I go any deeper with this, because otherwise this silicone will actually fill the head, and that's not a good idea. That'll do. So now we need to mix another batch. Right, here we go again. You can see that on the surface of the RTV silicone, you can see that there's bubbles rising to the top and they're popping, which is good. It's showing that this silicone is nowhere near as thick as that silicone we were using for the propeller mould. It's much better. But alas, we need probably one more pot. I just hope I'm getting these ratios right, because we're in trouble otherwise. Right, there we go. Another 200 probably. And that's 9. We want 9.5, so I think we're okay with that. I have found this Taranti RTV silicone to be very sensitive to ratio, and I have in the past got it wrong with this resin, and I've ended up with a right mess, and even after a year it was still tacky and runny and a mess. So fingers crossed. And you're probably looking at about £30 worth of RTV silicone in that tin. And we've just used probably 3/4 of it. But it is old, and I was prepared to just write it off, thinking it had gone off on me, and it hasn't. It's not as runny as it should be, but it's certainly better than that that other stuff was that we used last time. So fingers crossed. Hopefully tomorrow we'll wake up and this will be nice and solid. And we've just got the problem of trying to get that head out of there. I'm sure it will, the plasticine parts certainly will get probably destroyed trying to get the head out. But you never know. Doesn't really matter if it gets damaged. This should be more than enough to fill this. It better be. Well, more than enough was probably an overstatement. It's only just enough. So there we go. So what I am going to do is I'm going to leave the pot as what we call a witness pot. And what you do is you just use that to tell you what state it's in as far as drying. Well, there's a little bit left in there, not a lot, but enough to do some small items, I think. The trouble with these quarter scale models is everything gets so flipping big and the materials cost goes right up. But anyway, there you go. I chose to do it. So it's been about 24 hours and our witness pot, that is solid rubber in there now. So that's good. And the mould itself is solid. So I think we're good. So what I'm going to do now is just, ooh, and we're stuck to the bench. That's interesting. So we've got a little bit of seepage through the bottom there, and that's dry as well. So that's good. So the Lego was just weeping slightly, but you can see I had to top it up to the very brim and just replenish it. So now what you do is you just dismantle all the Lego, get the pots ready. That's probably all of them, and we just start taking it apart. I'm just going to clean them up as they come apart. So I'll keep taking this apart, just peeling the bits of Lego off until I've got a complete square, and then we'll take it from there. The larger pieces come off in more or less the same way, sometimes easier, sometimes not. But usually once you get a layer started, it comes apart fairly easily. And as you can see, you've got a lovely smooth sort of edge to it. It's a good way of making a mould. So. But I'll keep doing this and then we'll come back once it's all open. So that's all the Lego removed, and you can see it's just a little bit furry. So we just tear the these shards off. Now the shore strength, which is the hardness of the rubber and its resistance to tearing, differs with different RTV silicones. And in the spec sheet, usually the manufacturers will give you what's called the shore strength. That's the hardness as well, is in that. I think the shore strength is, oh well, I don't know. You'd have to look it up, but it's to do with the hardness and its tear strength. So I think it's a high shore strength if you want to make something like tyres and wheels and what have you. Not that you'd do it in RTV silicon, but shore strength is to do with rubbers and stuff like that. Anyway, as you can see, this all comes off, and the Lego came off fine. And I'm really pleased that this resin is actually, silicon has actually set, because one of the few times that I've had issues, it's been with this Taranti silicon resin or rubber. But this one seems to have set okay, but it just feels a bit softer than the blue stuff that you've seen in my other videos, which is the Maragon resin. The Taranti stuff does seem very fine. It's a lovely surface. It really does pick up all the detail really well, which is good. But it's just the Taranti is quite expensive. So what I'm going to do is put a fresh blade in the scalpel and tidy that up a bit more. Although, actually, I got most of it off just by pulling, so that's good. The plasticine that was around the joint, that's come away okay. I actually glued this dowel to a Lego brick to hold the head in position. That has actually damaged the Lego brick to the point where I've had to just throw it away. But it's a sacrificial single Lego brick. I can survive without one. But there we go. That's more or less tidied up. So there you go. Next step is going to be to make a slot to actually open it up so that I can get the plug out. So I'm going to put a fresh scalpel blade in the old handle. This is a fresh number 11, so we'll lose this one. And insert a fresh one. And then we'll open this and see if we can get the beastie out. Now that's the top, so the face is here. So I don't think it's really going to matter which way we go, but I'm going to go this way. A little bit. Hopefully you can see this. And I'm going to go this way a little bit. I'm just pulling it apart so that the blade can go down a bit deeper. And then with a bit of luck we can sort of prise that open enough that the head can come out. So I'm just going to massage it a bit and move it around a bit. There's a section there that needs cutting. Now I'm just going to pull and shove and see if I can get the beastie out. Might have to open him up a little bit more down through there. I may have to cut more just to give myself a chance. Now, as I said, I expect this to be pretty well damaged. Pulling it out, I'm not too worried about that. Nearly there. Keeps popping back in again. It's the ear pads that are causing me the grief. I'm actually going to pull the ear pad off to give us a bit more leeway. That's the ear pads off. Let's see if it'll come out now. There we go. So, he's out. Now, the next problem is going to be making sure we get all of the plasticine out from inside the mould. And I can see some, which you might not be able to see on the camera, up in there, right where the chin strap was. So I'm just going to see if I can pickle it out with this. Yeah, it's coming out nicely. Try very hard not to damage any of the silicone. That's most of it out. So there you can see in there, you can stretch it and pull it quite a bit. Now it may well be that we've got to pour one sacrificial to just get the first one out of there. So as long as you've not done too much damage to it when you cut it, well, no damage, when you open it like that and cut it, what you can do is just push it back together and you can see just gentle pressure and you cannot see the join. So all I tend to do is just put a very loose rubber band around the top there, or 2 or 3 at different heights, just to hold it closed. And then I'll pour through this hole here, then we'll open it and we'll pop a head out. So I think the first few we pull, or the first one we pull, will probably bring some plasticine with it, and that'll clean the inside of the mould out, I'm hoping. If not, then we'll have to get in a bit more and do a bit more cleaning. So the next step now is we'll mix up some of the polyester fast set resin and we'll pour ahead, see what we get. So we're all cleaned up and I've got my scales sorted out, they were playing up, got my timer ready. So you can see the scales are zeroed here. You might not be able to see the scales are zeroed, but they are. Where's my camera gone? There we go. Let's move it all around a little bit so you can see what's going on. So scales are zeroed, timer's set to 00. I've got my smooth cast 650D or 65D, part A, part B open, and what we do is we mix 50-50 these two and then we pour it in there, and as you'll see the setting time is really quite quick. I think we timed it on one of the other videos and we were down at 4 minutes or something like that. This is a urethane resin, white semi-rigid resin. The other stuff that we might have used might have been a styrene type resin, but you'll see this is very similar, but we'll see how long it takes to set. What I'm intending to do is do a roto mould, which well, you'll see. We'll kick it off and you'll see. So I'm just going to zero everything. I think I'm going to put about 30 grams in here, I think. Let's measure it out and see what we get. That's 10. I think we'll go for about 20. Well, let's go for that. There's 22.3. I'll tear it. So we want 22.3. $21.7, 22.7. It's a little bit top heavy on that end. Keep the timer off and give it a stir. So I'm just going to stir it for probably 30 seconds to make sure it's well and truly done. Coming up to 30 seconds, 22. Placemat, something to put my stick on. That's 30 seconds. So we'll just wipe that off, put it on there. So we pour this in, put a little bit of kink in it. And there's quite a bit in there, I think. So that's in there. Then all we do, get this all out of the way, we place this little piece of plastic on top and we just hold it with our fingers. And then we effectively just hold it best we can and we rotate and we tumble it. Now I've got to be careful here because I'm not sure how well I'm sealing that opening, but basically, as you can see, I'm tumbling the container. Now we might be better off with a couple of rubber bands in there, I'm not sure. But we'll go with what we've got at the moment. You probably can't see a lot of this, it's probably all happening off camera. But anyway. Let's just look at our witness pot. We're still running, so we'll keep going. Keep pouring it or tilting it, running it around inside the mould. Right, that's about 2 minutes 15. I can feel some heat on this black plastic, which is a good sign. That's 3 minutes. I think we saw this go rigid after 4 minutes. But actually, thinking about it, I don't think it was this fast cast. I think we used a slightly different resin. This stuff ends up a bit like styrene, like plastic, when it sets. The other stuff we used before, I think, was a polyester resin, and it ended up more like a very fast epoxy. So we'll see. I can try it with the other material if this doesn't give what I want. And the more I think about it, the more I think this is probably not the right material for this. But we'll see. Right, let's just put that down a minute. I think that's gone semi-rigid. So we'll give it another few seconds. But we'll probably find it's actually gone rigid enough that it has now coated the inside of this thing completely. So we'll give it just another 30 seconds and I'll keep tumbling it just to make sure. We're doing this to make a hollow cast. We don't want it solid because obviously solid is going to be quite heavy. I think we ended up at 22 grams. So there we go. That's been 5 minutes. Let's have a look at our witness pot. That's, probably can't see, but it's almost coming out as a solid. It's now gone very kind of rubbery. That was 5 minutes and 20 seconds. So I think we give it another 5 minutes, come back, and then we'll see what we've got. So it's been 43 minutes since I put that in the, mixed the two together. And the reason I did that was because this was not firm enough, and it's still a little bit flexible, but the stuff really does stay like that. It's a bit more like styrene. It's very much like a plastic material. So the problem is with it being like that is getting it out of the mould, because the possibility of distorting it and crushing it with your hands when you're trying to get it out of the mould, and as you saw when I took the master out, it was quite an act. You know, you really had to pull on it. So there's a good chance of actually crushing it trying to pull it out. So we may have to use the other resin, which was a little bit more, it was a stiffer resin. So let's see what we've got. So as you can see, the sheet across the top has just sealed it, and that's fairly firm. So we'll just peel some of this away. This is just some of the plastic that's got underneath the blocker plate that we put on top there. So I'm just tearing that out of the way to get it out of the game. So let's get that all out of there. Okay, and then all I'm going to do is take the rubber bands off, so we don't need these anymore. And you can see they're pretty much the same size as the opening, so the amount of stretch that I put on them was very little, but it was just enough to keep it closed. And I dare say you can hardly see the join in it. So now if we try and pop it open, and the difficult bit is going to be getting that out without doing too much damage to everything, but hopefully it's stiff enough that we can do it. Now the problem's going to be on this edge where the strap goes. So we'll try and get it out without damaging that. And it's coming out, but the trouble is, as it comes out, it pops back in again. So I think we're going to have to come forwards and back, but it's loose. It's not stuck. And I think the chin is probably part of the problem. Let's get the chin out. Ow, that's plastic is sharp. It's proving harder than I thought I was expecting. The plastic, it's not, I'm not crushing it, well, not so far, but it is proving difficult to get out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that just a fraction more. I don't like doing it, but it is proving just a little bit difficult. So there we go. Come on, come on. And there we have him. With the strap, it's more or less intact. As I said, this first pull would probably remove some of the plasticine, and any that was left in the mould seems to have come out with this. So if we peer in there now, it's almost clean. Almost, but not completely. There's a little lump at the end there. Let's get that out. There we go. But now we've got a helmet with all the... We've got a pilot face with all the detail that we need. It's possible the strap could have come out a little bit better. There's a few air bubbles in the area around here, but I could either fill them in or just not worry about it and just go with it. But there you go. Let's see how heavy he is. And he's got a bit of neck to lose, which is quite heavy by the look of it. So he's 38.8 grams, so 39 grams. But for a quarter scale aircraft, that's no weight at all, really. I don't, you know, I think a lot of it is in that neck. So it just as I hold it, I can feel the weight here. So I must have had it upside down a little bit longer than I needed to. But it's not soft. Yeah, I'm not flexing it at all. So that was a good weight. That was, what did we do? 22 grams. 2 lots of 22 grams in the pot. So a 44 gram mix got us that figure. All right. So I hope you've learned something from that. Maybe not to bother in future, but I don't know. But no, from that I've now got as many heads as I want to cast. You've seen how easy it is to cast it. I just mix a bit of the gook, pour it in there, tumble it around. This guy's hollow, but he's nice and solid. So we'll paint him up, and that's him all done. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please click like and subscribe, because it does wonders for my stats and my figures and stuff like that. And I'll see you on the next one.